Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, uh, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows, where we watch the Sunday morning news shows so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. What a great way to start the week all together, commiserating over all the depressing news in the world. And there's so much going on already
And
today.
make sure you tweet this out, by the way, because we want to make sure that, given that there's so much going on, share this, guys. Bring other people to the stream. Yeah.
Already today, we've had some really important breaking news. First of all, Julian Assange has been granted yet another appeal in the UK. So his legal saga, his never-ending legal saga continues, but it does mean that he will not be extradited, at least right now, to the US. So that's good news. But yet, again, he's still not free, which is the fundamental issue here. And then also the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and also 3 leaders of Hamas, which is not surprising, given how the ICC is, generally skewed towards, in favor of the U.S. and its allies. But the fact that they're willing to go out and indict 2 Israelis is very historic. I think the Hamas indictments are a little problematic, but we can get into that, I think, later this week on Useful Idiots. But that's a very historic moment.
It is, yeah.
And the president of Iran died in a helicopter crash.
Right. That too.
Yes,
yeah.
Is that too.
Another historic moment in a different way. Yeah. Yeah. So lots of stuff going on. Obviously, prepare yourself for wall-to-wall allegations that the ICC arrest warrants of Israeli officials are anti-Semitic.
Yeah. And just to clarify, they have not been indicted. They've requested indictments.
Yeah. The request.
Important distinction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The indictment request is anti-Semitic. Be prepared for that. Alrighty. Should we go to MTP to meet the press?
Let's meet the press.
Let's do it.
Good Sunday morning. The political world is gearing up for an historic face-off. President Biden and former President Trump have agreed to the earliest general election debate in modern history. Trump, who has been beset by a swirl of legal challenges, is hoping he can prove his case that President Biden is not up for another 4 years. Biden wants to show why, as he argues, Trump is unfit for office. It's also a likely attempt by President Biden to shake up the race.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal.
If this horrible...
By the way, the cuts on that suggest a lack of continuity. Probably a lot of takes. There's a reason that those cuts are there.
I'm sure it took them just a lean 10 hours to produce that 10-second clip.
Yeah.
Individual finishes the debate, which I think he will. If he's standing, they'll say it was a brilliant performance. It was a brilliant performance. They've never seen anything like it.
Now, general election debate.
By the way, Biden saying, make my day, pal. Is this like, are they giving him like a new catchphrase now? Make my day.
Yeah.
Which is like, who is that? Clint Eastwood, I think.
Dirty Harry, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really going to resonate with young people.
The young people, who we need. Yeah. Yes.
Quoting a film from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And which is like associated with like patrician white people. Like it's Clint Eastwood embodies. Make my day. Okay. All right.
I mean, and Clint Eastwood also famously spoke to a chair.
That's a great point. At the Republican convention, he's a Republican, and he spoke to a chair who he pretended was Barack Obama. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very. Yes. I mean, he's an actor. It's method acting.
Debates are the biggest stage for a presidential candidate. More than 73 million people tuned into the first Biden-Trump debate in 2020. Now, as for those legal battles, former Trump fixer Michael Cohen will be back on the stand tomorrow as the first criminal trial of a former president draws to a close. But despite it all, the state of the race remains stagnant. Biden continues to trail former President Trump in several key battleground states, down by double digits in Nevada and Georgia, states he won in 2020.
By the way, I saw this comment that I think is worth reading. CJ Lady points out, Dirty Harry said that, make my day, while holding a gun to a black person's face.
Well, very appropriate for Joe Biden, who who supported segregation. He supported or he opposed busing.
Yeah, he was
right?
an anti-busser.
And then, of course, authored the mass incarceration bill in the 1990s, which massively increased the imprisonment of Black people.
Yeah, and he bragged that you got arrested for anything but jaywalking with that bill.
And then he said that Barack Obama was clean and articulate for a Black person.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he didn't say for a Black person, but he said clean and articulate, and it was clear that that's what he meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Biden is certainly making the day of fellow white racists, but not moving the needle in the election. And, who would have thought that Trump's trial on whether or not he itemized the hush money payments for Stormy Daniels as a campaign expense or not, whether that would have moved the needle and moved Americans to vote for Biden. On MSNBC, they really expected that too, but I think for anybody else, this wasn't going to do it because who cares about that case?
Right.
It's so profoundly boring and silly.
I believe we did predict that.
Yep.
Right here. Yeah.
We did. Just like the things we don't talk about anymore because they're just, the actual important issues of the world of taking the place. Remember we used to talk about documents all the time?
Oh, yeah. Doc talk.
Remember doc talk? Like there's been no doc talk at all because, again, who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah.
On Saturday, the president argued Mr. Trump presents an unhinged threat to the country and took a swipe at the polls.
You hear about how, we're behind in the polls. Well, so far the polls have been right once. Now, look, we're either tie or slightly ahead or slightly behind, but what I look at is actual election results. And the election results are in the primaries. Well, Mr. Trump he doesn't have an opponent, but he lost 120,000 votes in Pennsylvania, didn't vote for him. They voted for a woman who's no longer in the race.
Meanwhile, on Friday night at a Republican dinner in Minnesota, former President Trump falsely claimed he won the state in 2016 and in 2020. He lost both times.
I thought we won it in 2016. I know we won it in 2020. We got to be careful. We got to watch those votes.
At the NRA convention in Dallas on Saturday, Trump again falsely claimed to have won the 2020 election.
FDR, 16 years, almost 16 years. He was 4-term.
Now, the former president is in the early stages of the search for a running mate. Among the prominent Trump supporters who showed up for court this week in New York, potential running mates dressed like Trump, including North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance.
What is that? Is that so he can go on a bathroom break and they pretend to be Trump or something?
That is pretty embarrassing.
So embarrassing.
I did not see that one. They're playing pretend, dress up as their hero.
Yeah.
As their hero. Like they're doing like what kids do. I once dressed up as Raffi, the children's singer, because that was my hero. So these guys are dressing up as Donald J. Trump, their hero, who they also want to be running alongside.
Right.
In the
Really
election.
pathetic.
Wow, that is really lame.
Yeah.
This debate is going to be so bad between these two. I mean, Joe Biden, who can barely talk, and when he does talk, he just, lies through his teeth constantly,
Right.
And we'll get into some of his lies shortly. And Trump, who also, he's a little more articulate, but he also lies constantly too. And their first debate, you remember when it was just Trump was so aggressive and rude. It was just awkward. It was just very awkward. It was elder
awkward,
abuse.
yeah.
It was really
was,
elder
yeah.
abuse. It was, and now it's going to be even worse.
It's really ridiculous. Well, maybe that's what they're going to do. They're going to be behind him. They're going to tag out. So Trump will start the debate. Then I'll get a little tired. One of these guys will come in for backup.
I would support that. I think a tag team presidential debate would be great for both these candidates.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Burgum also joined Trump in Minnesota on Friday night.
And they just agreed or something to a vice president debate. I said, how can I have a vice president debate? I haven't even picked I haven't even picked the gentleman or woman yet. I haven't picked. A lot of people think it's that guy right there. I don't know who the hell it is. He'd be very good. We have a lot of them would be good, Doug, right? We have a lot of good people.
And joining me now is one of those potential vice presidents.
Okay, that's it. I don't know if Trump himself knows, by the way, who's going to be his VP. I have a feeling he's going to surprise himself.
Well, we're all just waiting in anticipation. It's so suspenseful and exciting.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah, the same two candidates in two consecutive elections, two of the worst presidents in history. I think many people would agree, who are so out of touch with everything, and that's our choice. And who's actually policy-wise, at least on foreign policy, there's actually very little difference when it comes to mass murder in Gaza. They're totally united. Trump's only criticism is that Biden isn't supportive enough of Israel. Sometimes he talks about how there should be peace, but that's all just fluff at this point. So really, very little differences between these two when it comes to policy. Domestically, yes, a little more difference, but even there, there's a lot of similarities.
But we also want to show you, because the media likes to highlight, it's relevant. They like to highlight Trump's lies and dishonesty, but we feel it's unfair for Biden not to get that same amount of scrutiny. So here's a clip of Biden saying something interesting, not factual, something that one could call a lie, while speaking this weekend at Morehouse College.
I was there 9 days after. Sent pictures of tying a mother and a daughter in a rope.
By the way, he's talking about 9 days after October 7th. And when he says there, he means Israel. Okay.
I was there 9 days after. Sent pictures of tying a mother and a daughter in a rope, pouring kerosene on them, burning them, and watching as they died.
And here's the Washington Post reporting. A White House spokesperson later clarified that U.S. officials and the president have not seen pictures of confirmed such reports. Independently, the president based his comments about the alleged atrocities on the claims from Netanyahu's spokesman and media reports from Israel, according to the White House. So there you go, guys. We have a choice between two liars, the difference being that one liar is called out much more than the other.
I mean, it's unbelievable. They've already had to admit that he did not see any photos, that the initial claim was a lie. And now we're talking about 7 months later, more than he's still lying about it. The guy's been a liar his entire career. Yeah. He lied about his background. He stole a foreign politician's stump speech. He's claimed to have fought apartheid in South Africa.
Was arrested for that, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. He claimed to have stood up for civil rights. He did not. So really, we have two liars.
Two pathological liars.
Two of the most obscene liars the presidential contest has ever. I mean, everyone lies if you're a politician. Yeah. But these two really are off the charts.
Well, you know what they say, Aaron, representation matters. And it's important for pathological liars to know that they too can be president.
Right. Well, someone who, I don't know if you can call her a pathological liar. She's certainly very candid sometimes about what she really thinks. And that's gotten the world in a lot of trouble. Her name is Victoria Nuland. Until recently, she was a senior State Department official. And she resigned and is now back to private life, and therefore is more free to tell us how she really feels, including about the need to escalate a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine that she played a large role in starting. So Victoria Nuland spoke to ABC News.
Now by Victoria Nuland, former Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs in the Biden administration. Good morning to you. These are the largest gains we've seen in Russia, as James just explained. President Zelensky directly blaming the delay of foreign aid. Can they turn this around?
I think they can certainly turn this around, Martha, but the 6-month delay certainly made a difference. The front line for Ukraine needs the artillery that we are sending. They need more air defenses. They need to be able to stop these Russian attacks that are coming from bases inside Russia. So I think there's also a question of whether we, the United States and our allies, ought to give them more help in hitting Russian bases, which heretofore we've not been willing to do.
And do you think they should?
I think if the attacks are coming directly from over the line in Russia, that those bases ought to be fair game, whether they are where missiles are being launched from or where they are where troops are being supplied from. I think it's time for that because Russia has obviously escalated this war, including, as you said at the beginning, attacking Russia's second city, Kharkiv, which is not on the front lines, and trying to decimate it without ever having to put a boot on the ground. So I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
Okay, so according to Victoria Nuland, it's not enough that we're flooding Ukraine with advanced weaponry, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of it. Now she also wants that weaponry to be directly authorized for strikes inside of Russia. And the reason why the Biden administration has avoided this step is because, you know, they're already a co-belligerent in the war. They're helping Ukraine select targets. They're providing intelligence and they're providing all this weaponry. But they felt as if we're helping Ukraine like strike inside Russia, then that just maybe takes it a little bit too far, and we're at risk of us being hit, like U.S. bases being hit and other NATO bases being hit around Europe, given that scale of involvement. Victoria Nuland says, never mind that. Let's have essentially World War III rather than like a simmering proxy war, world war, as is happening right now.
It's like pulling off a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
Really quickly, yeah.
He's saying, like, let's go all the way with it. Why not? And of course, again, the possibility of an alternative to all this warmongering is never even considered when there have been opportunities for diplomacy from the start that the U.S. has undermined.
But she does bring cookies.
She did bring sandwiches once, yes. To
sandwiches. I thought they were cookies. That's what I would have brought. But
to the people of you know, 10 years ago, she played a major role in the U.S.-backed coup in Ukraine. She was caught on tape plotting who should be the next leader of Ukraine. Turned out to be prophetic because that's who was chosen, or her guys. She then even undermined her own president, Barack Obama. Barack Obama was going to give peace efforts a chance, and Nuland, basically behind the scenes, along with other people, including Joe Biden, undermined that and flooded Ukraine with weapons and undermined the peace accord, the Minsk peace accords, which could have avoided all this. And so, anyway, unsurprisingly, after doing all that, she wants to take it to the next level. Okay, let's hear more from Victoria Nuland.
Reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia, pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support. So they are getting a direct advantage in this war from our hesitation, and they have escalated massively. As you know, they have flattened a third of Kharkiv without ever having to get on the ground there. So it is time to stop that and help Ukraine push them back.
I mean, you know, it's just unbelievable. She's done so much to destroy Ukraine, using it for her personal obsession of weakening Russia. She really embodies the sickness of the establishment. She's a former aide to both Dick Cheney and Hillary Clinton. So even though these are supposed to be bitter rivals from different parties, it shows actually that on this key issue of warmongering, they're totally united and that she could move in both circles. She's and now she's saying that a country that she's used to weaken Russia, which was the goal of the Ukraine proxy war all along, that we should get involved further and there should be even greater war, that there should be strikes across the border into Russia. And again, you know, in principle, does Ukraine have the right to hit Russia? Of course it does. They're being attacked by Russia.
Right.
But is that the best course of action when, given that Russia has a huge military advantage, and so far everything is played to Russia's strengths? And that's the point. Her policy of flooding Ukraine with weapons has always played to Russia's strengths because Russia always has escalatory dominance. That's one thing that Barack Obama warned about before he left office. And so her policy in the name of defending Ukraine is actively helping fuel its destruction. And again, there have always been alternatives. There's always been the possibility of diplomacy, which she just won't even consider because she's undermined it from the start.
Right. And I mean, we had John Mearsheimer on, and one of the things that we asked him was kind of like, why are they doing this, given that Russia does have this advantage? Why are they continuing with this war? And he said that he thinks that it's because they promised that they would win, that Ukraine would win, that they can't stop the war until they win. But of course, they're not going. Excuse me. Of course, they're not going to. It's just unbelievable that these people can be so like childish and stubborn. And it's also that it's worth it to them to bleed Russia, regardless of what it does to Ukraine.
Okay, well, let's hear more of.
Sorry, everyone.
Let's hear more of Victoria Nuland.
Secretary Blinken's trip to Ukraine certainly sent a message that the U.S. is supporting him. But what would you say to those Republicans who are still concerned about aid going there, or those Americans who say, look, we have problems at home. Why do we need this aid?
That's so diabolical.
Well, obviously, we have problems at home, and we need to support our domestic front and our international front. But this is about more than Ukraine, and this is about more than Vladimir Putin. First of all, if Ukraine cannot survive and thrive, Putin will not stop there. He will walk towards NATO, and we will have a much larger war because he will know that he can, and we will become directly involved. But also, if you don't...
It's such a stupid talking point. The whole point of Russia's invasion, or a major point of it, was to keep Ukraine out of NATO, because if Ukraine is in NATO, then if there's a civil war there, then Russia would be forced to basically fight NATO. And that's what William Burns, who was the current director of the CIA, warned about in 2008, when he said, for Russia, NATO is a red line in Ukraine, because given the amount of people inside Ukraine who identify with Russia, who have family there, if there's a civil war there, that would put Russia in a position where it'd be forced to intervene, and therefore it would be fighting NATO. So Russia's trying to avoid Ukraine being in NATO, and Russia's already struggled to achieve its goals in Ukraine. So why, after doing that, would it then take a fight to a new country? It makes absolutely no sense. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah, they like making the Hitler analogy.
They love it
because they know that they can't really justify what they're doing unless there's an existential worldwide threat, which doesn't exist. But they need to make it seem like him.
But what this aid?
Well, obviously, we have front and our international front, but this is about more than Ukraine, and this is about more than Vladimir Putin. First of all, if Ukraine cannot survive and thrive, Putin will not stop there. He will walk towards NATO, and we will have a much larger war because he will know that he can, and we will become directly involved. But also, if you don't stop Putin here, a guy who has bitten off a piece of a smaller country that was not doing anything to hurt him, then it sends a message to autocrats everywhere that it's free game to invade your neighbor, etc. And that'll send a message in Asia. It'll send a message to Iran, all around the world.
Again, they love saying your neighbor because they know if they don't put that in, that disclaimer, and people will just say, well, wait, didn't we invade Iraq?
Yes.
And weren't you for that invasion?
She was a part of it. She worked for Dick Cheney at the time.
Right.
She was Bush's ambassador to NATO. So yeah, they have to include the qualifier neighbor, because Iraq technically was not the U.S. neighbor. But meanwhile, Gaza is Israel's neighbor.
True.
And the West Bank is Israel's neighbor, and they've been occupying that for decades, and now Israel's invading Gaza. So even there, she's caught in another act of hypocrisy.
Right.
And again, should Ukrainians be sacrificed to send a message to somebody else? How does that make sense?
It's goes back, as Lindsey Graham has warned us, Aaron, it goes back to Taiwan.
There we go.
So if the United States wants to lead in this world, if we want to maintain the free and open democratic order that has served us so well, we've got to protect it abroad so that we can stay safe at home. And to remind, the vast majority of this aid for Ukraine is coming right back to U.S. defense industry to build those weapons for us to replace the ones we're sending to Ukraine, and it provides good jobs in more than 30 states of the United States.
And NATO.
It's a
like when
jobs
they make
program.
that. Yeah,
It's a jobs program. Yeah. We have to fight a proxy war against the world's other top nuclear power, kill tens of thousands of people because it's good for defense industry jobs.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, FDR had the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, right? So this is the War Progress Administration, another WPA, but instead of building useful infrastructure, it builds war. Yeah.
That's the acronym works. The acronym works. These people love to talk about how much they love the free market, and they're opposed to state welfare and state intervention, unless it comes to funding the same military industrial complex that gives them all jobs after they leave office,
right,
and funds their think tanks. So it's, speaking of hypocrisy, they're supposed to hate government spending on jobs. So how come that goes out the window when it happens to be for making weapons of war?
Right. It's socialist, it's corporate welfare and military welfare.
All right, I think that's enough Victoria Nuland for now. Maybe we can return to her later if we have time.
Yeah.
But let's turn to, oh my God,
this is
Elise Stefanik. She's a Republican member of Congress,
the watchdog of anti-Semitism.
Yes, she is basically shaping her entire political identity around being a watchdog. Basically, anyone, anywhere raising a Palestinian flag, recognizing Palestinian rights, Elise Stefanik will call you an anti-Semite and demand that you be fired and that your school be defunded. That's basically her new raison d'etre. And she recently made a trip to Israel to show her solidarity and to criticize Joe Biden, who's done everything he can to arm Israel's mass murder campaign, to criticize him, she says, for not being supportive enough of Israel.
As House Republican Conference Chair, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
It's great to be with you, Shannon, from the eternal capital of Israel, Jerusalem.
So you are not alone there in that National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is also there. We'll be meeting with Israeli leaders as you have been. NSC spokesman John Kirby said this week, we recognize Israel's right and responsibility, he says, to go after Hamas. That includes into Rafah. But he added this.
How they do that matters. And that's part of the conversations that we also want to have, and Jake will have, about going after that terrorist capability in Rafah in a way that's targeted, precise, and quite frankly, effective.
So
yeah, they've been so targeted and precise this whole time, right? So there's no reason to believe they won't do that this time. Such ridiculous, disingenuous, disgusting hogwash.
That allies have those conversations, and at a time that Amnesty International says U.S. weapons are being used in violation of international laws and U.S. laws. What about those conversations between the U.S. and Israel?
Well, first of all, the Biden administration has equivocated on their support of Israel. Shannon, one of the main focuses of my speech was that the American people stand strongly with Israel, as do House Republicans. We passed just this week on the House floor a condemnation of Joe Biden withholding precision-guided munitions that the House overwhelmingly passed in support in the Israel aid package. You've had equivocation after equivocation from Democrats led by Joe Biden, or whether it's Chuck Schumer calling for a new leader replacing Prime Minister Netanyahu. That is not the place. That is not the type of leadership we need to be seeing from the highest levels of the United States of America. And that's one of the focuses that I had today in my speech at the Knesset, that House Republicans stand strongly with Israel at their time of existential need. And let's take a step back, Shannon. October 7th was the bloodiest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. We want to make sure Israel has all the resources, no equivocation when it comes to eradicating Hamas.
What about the issue of Palestinians in the Gaza territory? I mean, tens of thousands of people injured and killed. Is that not part of the calculation as well?
Well, first of all, Hamas uses civilians as civilian shields. They are using civilians to try to protect them from Israel.
She can't even get the talking point right. It's that they use civilians as human shields, which is an answer that everyone puts in, despite the fact that it is not proven. Okay.
Targeting Hamas leadership. Israel has great respect when it comes to human rights, and that's how they have conducted all of their operations. That's why the United States stands strongly with Israel, and that's why we need to be a voice of truth, as there is anti-Semitic propaganda being shared around the world and being shared by perpetrators who support this terrorism.
I want to talk about the bill that you referenced. It did pass with
I mean, it's really extraordinary. Israel is using the most powerful weapons in the world, 2,000-pound U.S. bombs, to destroy all of Gaza. It's destroyed hospitals, universities, schools, mosques, homes, everything. And this idea that Hamas is just hiding behind civilians, and so therefore these civilians are just collateral damage. It's just a complete. It's blood libel. It's a complete lie. I mean, look how many children alone have been slaughtered. The official toll is around 40,000 now, but of course it's a massive undercount. And what is she using? She talks about anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic propaganda. The dead bodies are not anti-Semitic propaganda. They're the reality of what is being done with her support. And what's incredible about what she's saying is it's bipartisan. Anthony Blinken says similar lies about Hamas using everyone as a human shield.
Right.
Well, like what they mean is that they're all confined to the same death camp. Nobody can leave. And so in that respect, there are Hamas people inside of Gaza, but that's the end of it. In terms of like Hamas hiding behind people, Israel doesn't care where they are. They just bomb anything that they want. And they make up an excuse that, there's one Hamas person in the vicinity, so therefore it justifies flattening this entire neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm convinced.
While meanwhile cutting off like aid, food, like deliberately starving the people of Gaza, and that's why even the ICC had to act today. And that's one of the crimes that they're accused of in this application for an arrest warrant, is not just mass murder with bombs, but also depriving the Gaza Strip of basic aid.
Yes. Should we keep watching, Steph?
Yeah.
Elise? All right, let's go back to Elise.
I believe it was 16 Democrats joined you all in this bill that would force aid that's been congressionally approved and weaponry to move forward. Critics, though, say this. They call it an unprecedented attack on the administration's legal obligation to conduct arms transfers in line with U.S. and international law. The White House says the bill could raise concerns about infringement on the president's authorities under Article 2 of the Constitution, including his duties as commander-in-chief and chief executive and his power to conduct foreign relations. So would you feel the same way about this if it was a democratically controlled House and Senate telling, say, President Trump that, for example, in a place like Ukraine, he needs to send munitions that he may not feel lines up with his foreign policy goals?
Well, first of all, Shannon, the bill he signed into law that Congress passed overwhelmingly, he is not abiding by that bill. So the fact that he signed it into law that we passed, that's Congress's intent, and it was an overwhelming vote of support. The fact that he is withholding these very important defense resources to Israel at the time of team, you know what this is about, Shannon? This is about Joe Biden's beleaguered and failing polls in states like Michigan. There is desperation politically. Shame on Joe Biden. It is a betrayal of the importance of the U.S.-Israel alliance that is the most precious in the region. So it is about congressional intent, and it is the law he signed as commander-in-chief that now he is withholding those munitions. It's unacceptable. We condemn it, and we will continue to stand up when it comes to standing strongly with Israel.
What about this concept?
She sounds just perpetually upset. Like no amount of Biden support for mass murder is enough for her. Like anything short,
she needs more blood on the hands.
More blood, yeah, and the lack, and like any missed opportunity for more blood, even if it's like a symbolic pause of weapons, which is exactly what Biden did. He paused one weapon shipment. He paused it. He didn't even end it. He paused it. That is like an indignation to her. She's so upset.
Yeah, very upsetting.
that we have recognized generally since the late 1940s, that partisan politics stops at the water's edge, that we don't have people of a minority party overseas criticizing a sitting president. Is that out the door now?
Well, first of all, Shannon, I was invited to talk about my work when it comes to combating anti-Semitism and my strong record when it comes to U.S.-Israel support. The world needs to know.
What is her record combating anti-Semitism? It's holding hearings in Congress, harassing college presidents because college kids have free speech.
Right.
So they can say stuff like free Palestine and from the river to the sea.
And pretending that that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and making up stories about, Zionist students being assaulted when really, in real life, it's the anti-genocide students being assaulted, as we saw at UCLA. That's her supposed work combating anti-Semitism.
Right. Yeah, and it's also what's the other thing she does? Oh, she also undermines the fight against actual anti-Semitism by crying wolf when there is and pretending things that are not anti-Semitic are anti-Semitic.
Like what?
Like what?
Yeah.
Like saying from the river to the sea.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Israel needs to know that the House Republican majority stands strongly with Israel, that this equivocation, this weak, failed leadership that we're seeing from Joe Biden, that's not where the American people are. That's not where the United States Congress is. And it's also not reflective of the legislation that we passed that Joe Biden signed into law. So it is important for the world to hear. The world is looking for moral leadership, Shannon, and it's important that House Republicans step up to fill that void, which we have under Speaker Johnson's leadership.
I want to talk to you about the Veep stakes. Your name is continually.
All right. Well,
we got to watch a little bit more of this part. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
If you think she was mad now, wait for this part.
Okay.
On the short list, potentially, that this trip may be part of an audition. The New York Times had a lengthy piece where they talk about your transformation, they say, from somebody who was not supportive of President Trump to somebody who is full-throatedly supportive of him. They say you called him a whack job at one point, and they add this. In August 2015, she told a New York radio station that he was insulting to women and that his candidacy would hurt the party's efforts to attract female voters. According to her former friends, they continue, she thought Mr. Trump was too awful and ridiculous to be taken seriously. Her revisionism still shocks those who have known her the longest and who remember the disdain she expressed for Mr. Trump back then. So the question is when, more importantly, why did you change your mind about President Trump?
Well, Shannon, it's a disgrace that you would quote the New York Times with nameless, faceless,
but they're quoting your
sources.
Friends, so I'm giving you a chance to respond to
Shannon,
that.
Shannon, they're not quoting my friends. Those names are not included because they are false smears. I was attacked.
To be fair, there are a number of names of people. Just to be fair, there are a number of names of people who are quoted in the article.
Shannon, let me correct you.
People can read it for themselves.
This is a false smear, and let me tell you a fact, Shannon. In 2016, I was attacked as the only elected Republican from the Northeast who voted for President Trump. Democrats spent hundreds of thousands of dollars attacking me for that fact. So to say that I didn't support him is just false. I have been proud to be one of the strongest supporters, going back to when he ran for 2016, which was when it was my first reelection to the House. I have strongly supported him. He is going to be the next president of the United States. The American people know that. My constituents know that. And I'm proud to be one of his strongest allies in Congress. I have always put my district first, New York 21 first, and America first. And this is an opportunity for us to stop the failures of Joe Biden and elect a president who led to a booming economy, a strong national security. But my record speaks for itself, Shannon.
But let me ask you.
My record stands for itself.
Let me ask you, though, because they quote you on a radio station calling him insulting to women. Is that a misquote? Did you not say that?
I said the statement that the Democrats leaked out in 2016, that was insulting. However, Shannon, I stood by and supported him, and I strongly support him. And he has done so much to promote women in senior positions, as well as promote women's economic opportunity that we experienced under the 4 years of his administration. So I've been proud to support him. It's a disgrace that you would take a New York Times article and just read negative quotes when the reality was I was the only Republican elected woman from the Northeast who voted for him in 2016, who has strongly supported him, and I'm proud to be one of his strongest allies today.
Okay, we know where.
So she gets that. She's practiced that bullying during these congressional hearings and talking over people. Shannon, no, Shannon, no. I'm gonna let me put a fact out there.
So Elise Stefanik, basically, her agenda is Joe Biden should be attacked because he's not sufficiently supportive of Israeli mass murder, and Donald Trump cannot be praised enough. And how
Right.
dare you
How
impugn my
dare you?
credentials as a Trump fanatic?
Right.
That's
By
basically her
quoting the
message.
liberal rag that is the New York Times, even though
Yeah.
the New York Times in that article quoted her,
Yes.
which is kind of inconvenient
Yeah.
for her narrative.
She really needs some coaching, I think, in terms of like, you have to, as a politician, it's important to, I mean, you're probably not a warm person, but you have to pretend to exude some
Right.
kind of warmth and some kind of like, just some kind of chill. She really doesn't have much chill.
She has to pretend that she has less of a thin skin.
Yes.
You got to pretend to not have a thin skin.
Yeah. But she just loves the sight of dead Palestinian children that
Right.
she just can't hide her indignation that we're not killing enough of them. That's pretty much her
Right.
message.
Right. The problem is that there's some Palestinians still standing for Elise.
Yeah. And she also just really wants everyone to know that she, I mean, I could see her being Donald Trump's running mate. Trump obviously likes people who will flatter him and do his
Right.
bidding. And
he did say something about it being he said, we don't know who the man or woman is.
There we go. Well, what a lineup that would be. Elise Stefanik and Trump against Biden and Kamala Harris. Man,
Wow.
oh man. Okay, let's turn to somebody else. This is Congress member Jake Auchincloss.
Yeah.
Tough to pronounce. He's a Democrat. He's also a fanatic supporter of Israel who spoke to Fox News.
Now, Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Okay, so I want to start with a lot of what the Congresswoman had to say and the basis of her trip there. She says, listen, the president is not sending things that are included in a bill you guys passed and he signed. You wrote this in a statement that was on X a few weeks ago. It says, it's regrettable that the Biden administration's recent withholding of certain munitions has created the perception of divergence between the U.S. and its closest ally in the Middle East. Now, days ago, you voted against the bill that the Congresswoman referenced there. If you feel this way and you're worried about the perception, and these are things that Congress had already approved, why did you vote no?
Because it's a perception, not the reality. The reality is that the administration has approved more than 100 weapons transfers to Israel, and that Joe Biden is ironclad in his support of the U.S.-Israel relationship. And if I were a member of the Knesset or a senior Israeli official meeting with Ms. Stefanik, I would be asking myself, how long? How long until you equivocate? Because let's remember that 2 years ago, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Ms. Stefanik was a hawk for democracy. And then Donald Trump decided to fanboy all over Vladimir Putin, and Ms. Stefanik's support crumbled. She voted against aid for Ukraine just a month ago. And she'll do the same thing for all of our allies if President Trump so dictates. I mean, we just saw her tie herself into knots to try to defend her flip-flopping, and she'll do the same thing for any other ally.
First of all,
so this is the debate right now.
Right.
It's a competition between both parties. Who is more of a warmonger?
Right. How dare you accuse my side of being insufficiently belligerent and blood-coated?
I mean, this is like the race. Like, this is the only thing. This is how you make your case. Is like, no, we're the party of warmongers.
Right.
They're the party of equivocation and Putin loving.
Right.
We're the warmongers. That's the case they're making.
That's our range, political range.
Somebody put in the chat that his name is it rhymes with awesome class. So Auchincloss. Awesome.
I think it's Auchincloss. I think it's K, not Ch.
Auchincloss. Well, it rhymes with awesome. So
with awesome,
you can't argue with a rhyme. You can't argue with a rhyme. So back to Mr. Awesome Claus.
Contrast Shannon to President Biden.
Okay, she's not here to answer on the issue of Ukraine. And I know that there are a number of reasons that members voted against those particular aid packages. But let's stick to Israel for just a minute, because she says that it is confusing to Israel. There are mixed messages. The president has said there are certain things he will not send. So, yes, while transfers are continuing, fair to say he's publicly indicated he's not going to send everything that you guys approved and the bill he signed to send.
The president has committed to sending every dollar of supplemental aid that Congress approved. what he is saying is, I need a plan. And Shannon, I have
Again, look what they're trying to criticize Biden on, the Fox News anchor here. He hasn't sent every weapon. He's held up some 2,000-pound bombs. So we have one less shipment to massacre people with. That's the criticism.
Right. And Auchincloss's response is, well, he just wants to see a plan. He wants blueprints for the genocide, and then he'll keep funding it.
Yeah. And
he's sending the weapons. Yeah.
And he's sending everything. He's sending everything else anyway.
Right.
You know.
So disgusting.
Fought in these wars overseas, and I have seen that when you have military operations divorced from a political endgame, you can win every firefight, but you can lose the war. I want Israel to win this war. I want Israel to defeat Hamas, and so does the Israeli War Cabinet. There are 3 voting members of the Israeli War Cabinet. 2 out of the 3 agree with President Biden, not with Prime Minister Netanyahu. They want to.
2 of them actually just have been sought for indictment by the ICC.
Right.
Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. By the way, on the ICC warrant, why is it only Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant? What about Isaac Herzog?
Isaac Herzog, right, who said that there's no civilians, basically.
Yeah. Or Itamar Ben-Gvir or Smotrich. Like, why not these people? It's, you know, more members of Hamas have been indicted for, you know, a one-day operation, including Ismail Haniyeh, who had nothing to do with October 7th. I think that's pretty clear by now. He's on the political side, not the military side.
Right.
So, but more members of Hamas than Israelis. Again, I don't want to dismiss the ICC because what they did is very historic. Netanyahu being sought for an indictment is a really big deal, but I think they obviously needed to balance it out by indicting some Hamas people, but at least have, I don't know, only 2 Israelis. Come on, ICC.
Pretty pathetic.
You see a governance alternative in north, central, and southern Gaza that actually extinguishes the political capital upon which Hamas relies.
Okay, let me ask you quickly, because both you and Congresswoman Stefanik are alums of Harvard. I know you've been very concerned about some of the things going on campus there, the anti-Semitic demonstrations. You visited campus. You have said that there are things that you believe are in violation of federal law. Here's the Anti-Defamation League giving Harvard an F on how they're handling all this. Given that you think they're in violation of federal.
Oh, that's devastating for Harvard University. They get an F from the Anti-Defamation League, which is
considers Jewish Voice for Peace to be a hate group, just so you get a sense of their standards.
Not just a hate group, but according to Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, a proxy of Iran.
Right.
So this is devastating for Harvard. I don't know how they'll recover from this grading from the ADL.
The one silver lining of all of this is that people like the ADL, organizations like the ADL, are being revealed for what they are, which are not, which are total Israel proxies. That's the irony. They are projecting their own proxiness onto other entities.
100%.
Funding.
It needs to be on the table, Shannon. Harvard and other universities have, unfortunately, become ransacked by anti-Semitism. I have seen it in my conversations with Israeli and Jewish students. I have seen the fact pattern, and they need to look at their culture from first principles and actually create a culture of open discourse, of free speech, of mutual respect, in which people can pursue truth, and which everybody, regardless of nation of origin, of sex, of race, can have a suitable learning environment. Right now, Harvard is failing, and that is why, after the ADL reported those failing grades, I sent letters to the 8 universities in Massachusetts that got a C or worse and asked them for an action plan by May 17th, which they have returned, and which we are now reviewing with the ADL, to make sure that over the summer that they get their house in order.
He loves a good plan, Katie. He loves a good plan. He wants a plan for Gaza, right? After Israel destroys Gaza with U.S. weapons, he wants to make sure there's a plan for a proper collaborator force. And now he wants a plan for the schools. And then he says
he's a plan man. He's a plan man.
He's a plan man. And then he says, so after we get a response from the schools, we're going to sit down with the ADL.
Yeah.
So like who, like, so what is the ADL? Is the ADL like the overseer of schools now?
Yeah. I'm part of our government.
Yeah. Like, do we appoint them to some new branch where, like, Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL will now be the college
dean,
like
of anti-Semitism.
Israel dean. Yes. He's the dean of anti-Semitism. Yes. Did anybody elect them to that? Was that a decision by Congress that we missed?
No.
Like, it's a great everything. It's crazy. And again, look, the violence that we saw on campuses was directed at anti-genocide protesters.
Yeah.
Nowhere more starkly than at UCLA when hooligans attacked the encampment, the anti-genocide encampment, the Gaza Solidarity encampment, with batons. They launched fireworks into the crowd. They beat people. It was all on camera. The police did nothing. And as far as I know, there's still been no arrests. Nothing. Even though people have been identified. They've been identified. There was a LA Times article that identified people. New York Times as well, actually. There was an article in the New York Times that was actually pretty good.
And CNN actually did a report.
On CNN. Oh my God, on CNN, a young man admitted to taking part in the attack on the encampment. And then his mother, I think after getting a call from their lawyer, called back and said, oh, actually, no, he wasn't there. Even after she bragged how he was there.
And also, I think that he was going to go serve in the IDF. Was going to or had. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Also, Katie Halper did a video on this, which maybe we can show part of before the CNN report was released.
You did do a great video on this. That's true.
Thank you.
That's true. Well, hopefully Dean Greenblatt will take your video under consideration as evidence as he grades and reviews our college campuses.
Ridiculous. Yes. It really does remind me of the Bernie bro narrative. And I know a lot of people are critical of Bernie, and we've criticized Bernie on this, but the what we saw then, not just the Bernie bro narrative, but the media's lies about Bernie, where every single article about the Bernie bro problem and violence and hate speech and sexism, there was actually no proof. And in fact, the only physical attacks we saw related to Bernie versus Hillary were 2 physical attacks perpetuated by Hillary people on Bernie female supporters. But they keep saying it. Just a talking point. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Let's turn to someone else with thoughts on college campuses and people going out, risking their safety to protest genocide, because that's what these brave college kids did. But Robert Gates, the former defense secretary, does not appreciate their protests.
But I do appreciate. Well, let's throw to the clip, and then I'll add what I want to say.
Ask you, since you are speaking to us from a college campus, what do you make of how resonant this issue is with so many American young people who are out protesting at universities?
Well, this guy looks like he really has his finger on the pulse of young people. Definitely want to turn to this guy for his thoughts.
First of all, I think what has gone on, transpired between Israel and the Palestinians going back decades is very complex, very difficult, and I think a lot of the young demonstrators don't know much of that history.
He is taking a page from the Hillary book. Remember when she said that? And they're equally dismissive and contemptuous and derisive of young people who think that they understand things like genocide being wrong, but they don't get it. They don't get the nuances of how actually Israel needs to kill civilians. Israel needs to bomb hospitals and refugee camps. Israel needs to block aid from coming in. But it's the kids. They just don't get it. They don't know enough. They're ignorant, or else they would be supporting this.
I think that the way the universities have handled it depends on one thing. Almost all universities have rules about how protests can take place, protecting students' First Amendment rights, but at the same time allowing universities to operate without disruption and protect the rights of all the other students. I think those rules on too many campuses have been enforced, have either not been enforced in the past or have been enforced inconsistently. So I think where you've seen success in managing the protests and where the protests have not been disruptive, even though the students are making their points, are in those universities where the rules have been consistently applied and consistently enforced.
Meaningless cliche.
Sounds like he's making an appeal to the rules-based order.
Right.
As the Biden administration does when they talk about bad guy countries like Russia and China.
Right. This war criminal is doing that. Yeah.
We have to get back to the rules-based order on campuses where basically you can only protest approved topics and you can't protest mass murder that we're complicit in. I think that's what I'm hearing from the defense secretary. And anybody who does protest is ignorant of history, doesn't understand that mass murder is fine so long as we're supporting it.
How about we hear from our fave, John Fetterman?
Useful Idiot's fan favorite, John Fetterman? Why not? Let's do it. So he was asked to comment. So there was a dust up in the House recently where Marjorie Taylor Greene got into a verbal altercation with a Democratic member of Congress and they made fun of each other's physical appearance. And who else but John Fetterman came in as the voice of reason and moderation.
The voice of reason to talk about physical appearances. Yeah.
Yeah. And to call for civility.
Yeah.
Let's turn to the clash in the House Oversight Committee on Thursday night. Just to refresh our audience's memory, here's a quick clip.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading.
If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body.
Look at Jamie Raskin's face when she says that. Sorry.
Built butch body.
So you responded to all of this by saying, in the past, I've described the U.S. House as the Jerry Springer Show. Today, I'm apologizing to the Jerry Springer Show. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez responded by saying, quote, I understand you likely would not have stood up for your colleague and seem to be confused about racism and misogyny being a both sides issue, but I stand up to bullies instead of becoming one. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez seems to be suggesting that you're a bully.
Oh, well, of course, that's absurd. I was just simply responding to the kind of chaos and everything that Representative Greene started as well. And if everyone on the committee was proud of what they've produced, they're entitled to their opinion. Or if they feel that this is the kind of a video that you want to send to a classroom of 8th grade civics kind of students across America, again, that's their choice. Now, to me, that's their choice. But if I'm going to push back against anything, it's going to be pushing back against Hamas and not vote against Israel. And I'm going to
nice pivot.
Push back against Putin. I'm not going to vote against the aid for Ukraine the way Representative Greene has done. And then I'm also going to push back against the TikTok vote as well. And now TikTok is essentially a Chinese communist government asset.
That was flawless.
Can we get back to doing what's important, which is shipping more weapons off to Israel to murder civilians and fueling a proxy war in Ukraine and banning TikTok so that the kids don't get the wrong idea about all these policies being not just the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's John Fetterman right there. An appeal, the conscience of Congress right there. Can we all just get along and focus on the important things, which all involve warmongering and censorship?
Right. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I guess have we come to the end of Monday morning?
I just really think that they should be playing because it really is. John Fetterman does represent the bipartisan consensus, and that he just wants us all to get along, hold hands, and support war. So it's almost like they should be playing like soft, touching music underneath his comments there, because he really is speaking to our better nature, which is to stop fighting, come together, hold hands, and support war. So
speaking to our higher angels.
Exactly. John Fetterman. He's like the Rodney King of Congress right now. Can we all just get along?
Can we all just get along?
And warmonger.
Well, we have a very special announcement. And for that announcement, none other than Matt Wilson is going to join the stage. And then I'm going to play a little bit of a video that I made. Is that okay, Aaron?
Sure.
After that? Okay. Wilson, come on down.
So last week's show, Aaron's very good at doing these. It's flying off the shelves. You like to say act fast. I'm not as good as that, but I'll try. We had one of those where we had for the first 50 people to click on the link, 30% off of Useful Idiots for a year.
A year, guys. A year.
very quickly on Friday. So this morning we wanted to give our Monday morning audience, we thought maybe we could get everybody, but it went away too fast. So for our Monday morning audience, the link is in the description. The first 50 people to click on it right now, you get 30% off of Useful Idiots for the next year.
Not 10% off, not 20% off, not 25% off, not 29% off, but 30% off. Pretty amazing. So do it. Act fast, guys.
Aaron, do you have any slogan for us?
I'm just so I just think what a gift we given people today. We've given them the gift of John Fetterman, of Elise Stefanik, of all these wonderful people. Now we're saying, hey, you know what? These gifts are not enough. We're also going to give you 30% off for a year. So what a great way to start your week.
What a great way to start your week. Yeah. Also, guys, I didn't harass you about likes, but do give a like if you haven't already. As someone just pointed out in the chats, we need 100 more likes. And I'm going to give you one more gift, which is we're going to play part, not the whole thing, but a little bit of a part of the video that I made, which is a compilation of the media's discourse around anti-Semitism and violence and hate and the reality of what we're actually seeing at these protests. So here we go. We're going to just watch a minute or two, and then you can watch the rest at my channel.
There is no place on any campus in America, any place in America, for anti-Semitism or hate speech or threats of violence of any kind.
A research scholar at Arizona State University named Jonathan Udelman has been placed on leave after he was filmed harassing a woman in a hijab.
That's right. You're disrespecting my religious
Why are you wearing a mask?
boundaries.
You're so embarrassed to be happy with what you're doing. What does this have to do with religion? You're spewing hate. What does this have to do with religion?
I've seen some pretty ugly anti-Semitic incidents right where you are.
Vile displays of anti-Semitism, vandalism, and intimidation led to police intervention at numerous universities.
Okay, so my tax dollars are supporting this Jew hating?
No, you
I don't
for
think
all the
so.
tents.
By News 9 shows the moment Dartmouth College professor Annalise Orlek was arrested by police during last night's protest. The 65-year-old says she was among a handful of professors who showed up to support students. Orlek, who's been a professor at Dartmouth for more than 3 decades, says part of her bail condition is being banned from Dartmouth's campus.
My message is stop weaponizing anti-Semitism, talk to your students, talk to your staff. Don't assault 65-year-old women in the name of keeping the campus safe.
Making Jewish students feel unsafe at their own schools is unacceptable, and it is happening way too much right now. Harkening back to the 1930s in Europe, and I do not say that lightly.
I think you do say that lightly, Dana Bash.
Yeah.
I would beg to differ. And as we're seeing again, as we talked about, the violence that's been perpetrated on campuses has gone against the Gaza Solidarity activists, and you have some great examples of that in the video. Where can people watch the full thing?
At youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. There's where you can do it. And we're dropping a shorter version with music behind it this week.
Oh, music. Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Music is always exciting.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of music, it might be music to your ears to hear that, once again, we're offering the special deal of 30% off for a full year of Useful Idiots at the link in this show's description. It flew off the shelves on Friday, but we didn't want to deprive our Monday morning audience, so we're offering it for a limited time just today. If you act fast, you can get 30% off a year for Useful Idiots. Give the gift of levity, of laughter, and of many more John Fetterman clips and Jake Tapper clips and Dana Bash.
Yep.
We've got you covered.
Yep. And someone asked if I have a PayPal link. I do, but I also have a Patreon, which is the best way to support my work if you want to. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And also, of course, be supporting this show.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to Monday Morning. We appreciate it. Our website is usefulidiots.podcast.com. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.